You see, life is not always a straight line. It meanders like a river, winding through valleys of doubt, climbing over stones of resistance, and brushing softly against moments of stillness. And in that winding, many begin to wonder, am I on the right path? But God, in his divine subtlety, does not always shout. He whispers, through moments, through people, through a quiet inner knowing. The signs are not always loud, but they are always there for the one who has ears to hear. So if you're walking and questioning, if you're praying and waiting, listen closely. There are signs, gentle, spiritual road signs. And when they appear, they are not just signs that you're moving. They are signs that God is with you. Peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of God in the midst of them. When everything around you feels like it's falling apart, when the world shouts with noise, confusion, and chaos, yet there's still a sacred stillness within you. That is no accident. It is not something you manufactured, nor is it a trick of the mind. It is something deeper, something sacred, something eternal. It is peace that surpasses understanding. And when you begin to experience that kind of peace in the very place where you used to panic, it is a profound sign that you are walking in alignment with the path God has laid before you. You see, many believe that when they're on the right path, things will suddenly become easy. The seas will part, the winds will be still, the sun will shine. But that is not how God usually works. In fact, when you're truly walking in his divine will, you will often find yourself walking directly into storms. But instead of sinking, you walk on water. The peace within you becomes your flotation. The calm inside your soul becomes louder than the chaos outside of it. And this calm, this anchored peace, is not from you. It is a gift, a sign, a whisper from God that you are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are exactly where you need to be. To the human mind, this can be confusing, because externally it may look like nothing is going right. You may still face closed doors, heartbreaks, loss, even betrayal. But strangely, you don't feel defeated. You feel stable. Even in your tears, there's a knowing. Even in your questions, there's an assurance. This is what happens when your spirit is in sync with the Holy Spirit. You're no longer chasing peace. You're carrying it. And when you carry peace through pain, that is divine evidence of God's hand over your life. There's something spiritual happening that doesn't fit within the frame of logic. You might wake up one morning with burdens pressing down on your life, bills unpaid, dreams delayed, people walking away, and yet your soul whispers, keep going. That whisper doesn't come from motivation videos or even from your own willpower. It comes from God. He sends peace as a marker, not to remove the storm, but to remind you that you are not in it alone. The peace is his presence. It is his voice saying, this way. There are moments when this peace makes you feel like you're standing still in the eye of the hurricane. Everything around you is spinning: relationships, opportunities, deadlines, fears. But somehow you're not overwhelmed. It's not denial. It's not detachment. It's spiritual depth. It's rooted faith. It's the kind of peace that doesn't just whisper comfort, but commands your fear to be still. That's not from you. It's from the one who walks with you. The world will try to rob you of this peace daily. You'll be tempted to trade it for answers, for certainty, for control. But don't guard it, because when God gives you peace in uncertain situations, he's giving you proof that he is already in tomorrow. He's ahead of you, behind you, beside you. And that's why your spirit doesn't tremble, even when your flesh does. That's why your soul feels steady, even when your circumstances don't. The beautiful paradox of peace is that it often arrives not when things are good, but when things are hard. Peace during a party is normal. Peace during a storm is holy. If you've ever had a moment when you should have broken down but didn't, should have walked away but stayed, should have cursed God but still chose to pray, that's a sign. That's God saying, you're on the path I've set for you, and my peace is your compass. Alan Watts once said that the meaning of life is just to be alive. But for the believer, it goes deeper to be alive with God. To be in tune with his voice, his rhythm, his divine timing. That kind of life carries peace that isn't fragile. It's not circumstantial. It doesn't collapse under pressure. It strengthens you when there's no logical reason to be strong. And the presence of that kind of peace is often the clearest sign that you're not wandering aimlessly. You're walking faithfully. Sometimes you may even feel like everything is uncertain. The future looks blurry. The plans you made didn't unfold the way you expected. The road ahead is foggy. But within you feel unafraid. That's not ignorance. That's peace. Peace that comes when you're no longer walking by sight, but by faith. And faith doesn't always provide explanations. It offers assurance that you are being led, loved, and covered by the God who knows all, sees all, and holds all things together. This kind of peace cannot be mimicked or faked. It doesn't come through mere positive thinking. It is spiritual, and it is powerful. When you begin to recognize that peace as your new normal, you must understand it for what it truly is: confirmation. A message from God saying, I am with you. Not every battle will disappear, but every battle will be filled with purpose. Not every prayer will be answered the way you want, but every step you take will be saturated in meaning. So if you are in a season where you feel that peace, even as things break, even as people leave, even as life shifts, don't dismiss it. That's God's signal. That's heaven's way of saying, keep going. You are exactly where I want you to be. You are not walking blindly. You are walking by divine orchestration. And peace, that sacred calm in your core, is not just a blessing. It is the proof, the signature of God on your path. We often equate open doors with blessing and closed doors with rejection. But in the spiritual realm, a closed door can be one of the clearest signs that God is protecting you, redirecting you, and ultimately confirming that you are on the right path, just not in the way you expected. To walk with God is not to walk a path of constant affirmation. It is to walk a path of trust. And trust often begins when something you hoped for doesn't happen. Imagine you spent months praying for an opportunity. You prepared, positioned yourself, did everything you could. But then the door shut. Not gently, it slammed. And in that moment, you feel confused, perhaps even abandoned. But what if that closed door is not a rejection, but a redirection? What if it's God's way of steering you away from something that looks good but isn't meant for you? That kind of disappointment is painful, yes. But it is also sacred. There's a divine intelligence at work behind every no you receive from God. It is not arbitrary. It is not cruel. It is not silent. It is intentional, purposeful, and deeply loving. You see, God doesn't just open doors to bless you. He closes doors to protect you. He sees the future that you cannot. He knows the weight behind every choice, every person, every opportunity. And when a door closes, He is saying, I have something better. Not just for your circumstances, but for your soul. We are so trained to chase opportunities, to keep knocking until something gives way, to equate movement with success. But sometimes the holiest thing that can happen is a divine no. And if you can see that closed door not as the end, but as part of the path, you'll begin to understand the depth of God's wisdom. You'll start to see that every rejection is actually a form of redirection, not away from purpose, but toward a deeper one. Think about the times in your life when things didn't go your way. At the time it hurt. You may have cried, questioned, even pleaded with God to open that door again. But now, with distance and perspective, you see it clearly that closed door saved you. It taught you. It prepared you. It made space for something greater that you couldn't have predicted. And that hindsight is not just memory, it's revelation. It's God revealing that even in the no, He was guiding you forward. Alan Watts often spoke about the dance between what we desire and what life gives us. And in the Christian walk, this dance is even more intricate, because it's not just life giving and taking, it's God leading and withholding. And He withholds only when He loves. He only says no when the yes would have been a trap. A relationship you wanted to work out, a job you thought was your future, a place you dreamed of being. When those doors shut, something better is forming in the unseen. And yet, in the moment, a closed door doesn't feel holy. It feels like rejection. But this is where faith becomes more than a word. It becomes a lifestyle. Faith says, even though I don't understand why this door closed, I trust the one who closed it. Faith says, this no is not a punishment, it's preparation. And faith opens your eyes to the hidden hand of God, the hand that closes gently, even when the slam feels loud. When you walk in alignment with God's purpose, not every opportunity will be for you. Some doors will be tempting, exciting, promising. But discernment will whisper, this isn't it. And sometimes, even when you ignore that whisper, God will still protect you by shutting it himself. That is grace. Grace is not only what God gives you, it's what he keeps from you. And when you begin to realize that closed doors are gifts too, your entire perspective shifts. There are people who look back on their biggest disappointments and now say, that was the moment everything changed. That's how God works. He doesn't always explain why a door is closed, but he will always walk you to the next one. And eventually, you'll look back and see the pattern. You'll trace every step, every detour, every delay, and realize it was never random. It was choreography. It was divine movement. There's a holy irony in how God leads. Often he allows you to get close to the door, to knock, to wait, to hope, only to close it. Not to teach you, but to teach you. To teach you patience. To teach you surrender. To teach you that your peace does not depend on outcomes, but on obedience. When you trust God more than you trust your plans, a closed door doesn't break you. It builds you. And here's the deeper truth: sometimes the door doesn't close abruptly. Sometimes it slowly drifts shut, through silence, through disconnection, through a gradual pulling away. And even then, that is a sign. God is gently saying, this chapter is done. And your peace will come not from clinging to what was, but from trusting what will be. So if you are facing a closed door right now, if the thing you hoped for didn't work out, if the person left, if the opportunity passed, don't despair. Take a breath. Look around and listen. You are still on the path. In fact, that closed door may be the most powerful confirmation you've received yet. Because God closes doors for those he is preparing for something greater. Let the closed door humble you, but don't let it defeat you. Let it refine your spirit, not harden your heart. And above all, let it be a reminder that you are not walking this path alone. The author of your story knows what chapter comes next. And when the time is right, he will open the door that no man can shut. Until then, keep walking. Keep trusting. The door may be closed, but the path is still open, and it is holy. There are moments in life when something inside you begins to stir, quietly, almost imperceptibly. It's not dramatic, not always emotional, but it's deep. You feel a pull, a gentle yet undeniable draw towards something beyond yourself. You can't explain it to others, and even you don't fully understand it. But it feels real. It feels meaningful. That unexplainable pull toward purpose is not coincidence. It is the Spirit of God moving within you, guiding you toward the path you were created for. The world will often try to talk you out of that feeling. It will label it as impractical, irrational, or even foolish. But the call of God is rarely logical in the beginning. It doesn't make perfect sense to the mind, because it wasn't meant to be processed solely with logic. It was meant to be perceived by the Spirit. That stirring you feel when you think about stepping into something new, starting something bold, letting go of what's familiar. That's a holy signal. It's divine direction masked as inner restlessness. When you're on the right path, God will place a fire in your spirit that doesn't easily fade. You might try to run from it, ignore it, or convince yourself it's not real, but the feeling will return. It might go quiet for a while, but it never disappears. It keeps calling, keeps tugging, like the sound of a distant melody you can't quite shake. And over time, you start to recognize that it isn't just your imagination, it's alignment. It's the Spirit of God calling you into greater purpose. It's easy to dismiss these internal pulls because they don't come with clear instructions. They don't always tell you what to do or how to do it. They just say, this way. And you may look around and see no one else walking in that direction. You may feel like you're stepping into the unknown with no roadmap and no guarantee. But faith was never about certainty. It was always about obedience. God doesn't always give details, He gives direction. And when you feel that pull, it's His way of saying, "Trust me." There is a beauty in this divine tension, the space between what is and what could be. In that space, you learn to walk with faith instead of sight. You begin to move, not because you have everything figured out, but because you know deep down that staying where you are is no longer an option. That inner pull becomes stronger than your fear. You start making small changes, taking small steps, trusting that something holy is unfolding, even if you can't yet see the full picture. Many of the people God called in Scripture experienced this same mysterious pull. Abraham left everything familiar for a land he didn't know. Moses was drawn back to Egypt after fleeing it. David felt destined for more while tending sheep. None of them had full clarity, but all of them followed the divine tug on their hearts. That's how God moves, not always with a trumpet blast, but often with a whisper, a nudge, a weight in your soul that says, "You were made for more than this." When you're on the right path, you will often feel both scared and alive at the same time. That's because your spirit recognizes the divine in the direction you're headed. It may challenge your comfort, stretch your mind, even break your heart open. But underneath it all, there's peace. Not the kind of peace that says everything will be easy, but the kind that says this is right. And when you feel that kind of peace while stepping into the unknown, it is one of the clearest signs that God is leading you. You don't have to explain this feeling to everyone. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone is supposed to. This journey isn't about convincing others. It's about obeying God. And that's one of the most difficult parts of following His voice. You may be misunderstood. You may be mocked or discouraged. But if you keep listening, keep responding to that holy pull, you will discover that obedience always leads to clarity. Not before the step, but after. There will be moments when doubt creeps in. You'll question whether this is really God or just your own ambition. But that's where discernment and prayer come in. When something is truly from God, it won't just excite your ego. It will humble you. It will bring a quiet reverence, a sense of weight, a holy responsibility. You'll know it's from Him when you realize that the dream is too big for you to accomplish alone, and that you were never meant to. When God places purpose in your heart, He doesn't expect you to fulfill it in your own strength. He calls you into partnership with Him. And that's why He pulls you slowly, steadily, to prepare you, not just to accomplish something, but to become someone. Because purpose isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become in the process. The pull isn't just toward a destination, it's toward transformation. So if you're feeling that unexplainable urge to move, to start, to change, to rise, don't ignore it. Sit with it. Pray over it. Listen closely. Because the God who called you is faithful to complete the work He began in you. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to see the end. You just need to take the next step. The pull in your heart is not pressure, it's purpose. And when you follow it, you will discover that you are not lost, you are not late, you are being led. This inner stirring is sacred. Treat it as such. Honor it even if no one else sees it. Respond to it even if the world doesn't validate it. Because that pull, that quiet force inside your soul, that is heaven speaking. That is the path unfolding. And when you follow it, you'll come to know the truth: God was never far. He was always right here, drawing you, step by step, into who you were always meant to be. Sometimes, God speaks the loudest through the smallest things. You may be waiting for a booming voice from heaven, a parting of clouds, or a supernatural sign written across the sky. But often, divine confirmation comes quietly, in fragments of conversation, in unexpected moments, in the soft rhythm of ordinary life. And when you start noticing those small things aligning, not once, but again and again, it's not a coincidence. It's divine orchestration. These are the subtle ways God says, you're on the right path. You're scrolling through a feed and a verse appears. one that speaks directly to your situation. You hear a song you weren't expecting, but the lyrics echo the very words you whispered in prayer last night. A stranger says something that strikes your heart like a bell, a podcast delivers a phrase you needed to hear, or a quiet inner thought rises in you with unusual clarity. These are not random. These are the fingerprints of God, small, sacred moments of alignment that whisper, "Keep going." The human mind is quick to dismiss these things as chance, but the soul knows better. The soul recognizes the language of heaven. It sees patterns in what others call chaos, and hears meaning in what others call noise. When you're in tune with God, even a simple sentence can carry weight. Even silence can be full of answers. Divine confirmation doesn't always shout. It often nods. And that nod can be the difference between giving up and pushing forward. The closer you walk with God, the more sensitive you become to His signs. You no longer need flashing lights or miracles to know He's with you. You start noticing how your steps are guided in ways you couldn't have planned. You realize how conversations arrive right on time, how peace settles in when you're about to make a decision, how doors open or close in perfect rhythm. This awareness is not a skill, it's the result of spiritual intimacy. The more time you spend in God's presence, the more fluent you become in His language. Have you ever prayed about something deeply, and then within a day or two, someone unknowingly speaks to that very prayer? They weren't there. They didn't know. But their words carry exactly what your heart needed. That's not a fluke. That's God answering you through His people. Or maybe you're reading Scripture, and a verse jumps out with unusual power. It's as if it was written just for that moment, just for you. That's not coincidence. That's divine precision. God is not always going to send you dreams or visions. Sometimes He'll send a quiet sentence from a friend, a delayed moment that causes you to meet the right person, an inconvenience that turns into a divine appointment, a closed opportunity that leads you directly into something greater. And the more you learn to trust these small confirmations, the less you feel the need to control everything. You begin to walk with a kind of humble confidence, not because you know everything, but because you know He does. When you are on the right path, these little signs will become frequent. Not because you're lucky or special, but because God is near. His nearness is the real confirmation. You feel it when you pray. You sense it when you worship. You experience it in the way peace flows in, even when things around you don't make sense. This is how God operates, with gentleness, with precision, with love. He doesn't always explain, but He always affirms. And His affirmation often arrives in the form of small, sacred echoes. You'll notice alignment in timing. The phone call that comes exactly when you're about to lose hope. The opportunity that shows up right after you surrender. The idea that forms right after you release your fear. These are signs, not loud, not dramatic, but undeniably divine. And when you recognize them for what they are, you stop striving. You begin to rest in the rhythm of grace. Alan Watts spoke often about the interconnectedness of all things, the mysterious harmony of life when you step back and truly observe. In the Christian walk, that harmony becomes personal. It becomes a dialogue between you and God, a whisper from heaven woven into the fabric of your daily life. It is in this sacred noticing that you find reassurance. You are not lost. You are not alone. You are being led one small sign at a time. Sometimes the enemy will try to convince you that you're imagining things, that these confirmations don't matter, that they're too subtle to mean anything. But faith knows better. Faith sees beyond logic. Faith trusts the invisible hand of God moving pieces together, even when the whole picture is not yet visible. And in that trust, faith is strengthened. You begin to walk lighter, freer, because you no longer need proof. You just need presence. So if you've been noticing the small things, the repetition of a word, a verse that keeps appearing, a dream that feels too real to ignore, pay attention. That's how God often works. Not through the earthquake or the fire, but through the still small voice. And that voice speaks through details, through timing, through repetition, through the things others overlook. You are not crazy for noticing. You are not reaching. You are responding. You are tuned into something deeper. And the more you respond to these small confirmations, the more they will grow. Your relationship with God will deepen. Your steps will become more certain. And even in uncertainty, your spirit will rest, because it knows the difference between coincidence and calling. These divine confirmations, though small, are sacred. Treat them with reverence. Let them anchor your decisions. Let them fuel your faith. Because when God is confirming your path, He often does it in a way that leaves room for trust. He doesn't overwhelm you. He invites you. And if you accept that invitation, you will find that His guidance is not only constant but profoundly personal. Watch for the signs, listen for the whispers. Honor the stillness, and keep walking, because heaven is speaking and you are listening. There is something curious that happens when you begin to truly walk in the direction God has called you to. Not everything gets easier, quite the opposite. The weight increases, the battles intensify, the opposition becomes more noticeable. But instead of this being a sign that you're on the wrong path, it's often the opposite. The darkness resists what threatens it. When you are walking toward light, walking in purpose, walking under divine direction, the resistance you feel isn't random. It's spiritual confirmation. The enemy doesn't attack those who are already lost. He attacks the ones who are stepping into their God-given identity. He targets the ones who are waking up, who are becoming aware of who they are in Christ, who are choosing to rise even when life tries to hold them down. You see, resistance is not always a warning sign to turn back. Sometimes it's a spiritual alarm that tells you you're getting close to breakthrough. When you're doing what you're meant to do, you stir the atmosphere around you. Darkness notices, but so does heaven. There's a misconception in modern thinking that if things are hard, it must mean we're out of alignment, that God must be angry or distant. But in truth, many of the people most aligned with God in Scripture walked through fire, persecution, and rejection. Jesus himself was not met with open arms, but with thorns, whips, and a cross. Resistance does not equal misdirection. In fact, when you start feeling the pressure, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, it can be a clear sign that the enemy is reacting to your obedience. Because obedience disrupts hell. It breaks generational curses, awakens dormant gifts, and threatens the systems of comfort and compromise. And the moment you stop living for applause and start living for God's approval, the attacks may increase. But that's when you must remember God's path is not always painless, but it is always powerful. You are not alone in the resistance. You are not without weapons. And you are not walking blindly. You are walking boldly. The resistance may come in many forms. Fear that paralyzes you right when you're about to step forward. People who suddenly pull away. Voices in your head telling you you're not enough, not ready, not capable. Distractions that tempt you to settle. Delays that make you doubt. These are not coincidences. These are calculated tactics meant to derail the momentum that God is building in your life. But here's the deeper truth. If it's being fought this hard, it's probably that important. And that's where discernment is crucial. When you face resistance, don't automatically retreat. Ask yourself, is this resistance coming from the enemy trying to stop me, or is it God redirecting me? One will drain you and fill you with fear. The other will correct you and fill you with peace. Learn to tell the difference. And if you discern that the pressure is darkness trying to push you back, stand firm. Because spiritual opposition is often a sign you're standing in the right place. Alan Watts often spoke of opposites as necessary companions. Light and dark, sound and silence, joy and sorrow. In the Christian walk, this paradox is deeply spiritual. As you walk toward light, darkness will appear. But the presence of darkness doesn't mean light has failed. It means light is being noticed. You have to understand your obedience is not small. Your prayers, your quiet faithfulness, your decision to keep showing up when no one claps, all of it carries weight. And that weight threatens the plans of the enemy. But God does not leave you unequipped. He gives you spiritual armor, spiritual strength, and the indwelling presence of His Spirit. And when you feel like everything is coming against you, remember that it's not just about you. It's about what's coming through you. There's a ripple effect to your faith. Your obedience today will impact generations. Your courage now will open doors for others. And that is why the pressure is so real. The enemy fears your awakening. He fears your resolve. He fears your ability to rise again after being knocked down. So he tries to wear you out, confuse you, isolate you. But when you begin to see resistance not as a threat but as a signpost, something shifts. You stop being intimidated. You start being intentional. You begin to lean in when it gets hard because you understand what's at stake. You see, spiritual maturity is not avoiding resistance. It's knowing how to respond to it. And how you respond matters. You could run. You could quit. Or you could dig your heels in, lift your head, and say, if I'm being opposed, I must be close to something sacred. That kind of resolve sends a message. Not just to the enemy, but to your own soul. It reminds you that God is your defender. That He is fighting for you even when you don't see it. That every ounce of pressure you feel is met with a greater portion of His power. So if you've been walking through resistance lately, if the path seems harder than you imagined, if you feel opposition rising, don't let that discourage you. Let it confirm you. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. You're not being blocked. You're being built. And as you keep walking, the very things that tried to break you will become the things that shaped you. Because the resistance you face is not in vain. It is proof that you carry something worth fighting against. Keep walking. Keep praying. Keep believing. You're not alone in the struggle. And this resistance, it's not the end, it's the evidence. You're walking the path God has designed, and the pressure you feel is just proof that heaven is near and hell is nervous. There is a unique hunger that arises in the heart of someone who is walking in alignment with God. It's not a hunger for fame, success, or applause. It's a deep, spiritual longing for more of Him. It's the sense that surface level living no longer satisfies, that casual faith can't carry you anymore, that temporary pleasures are far too small for the weight of your soul. When this hunger awakens in you, it is not random, it is a divine signpost. God is drawing you in. He is showing you that you are on the right path, not because everything around you is perfect, but because everything within you is being stirred toward eternity. This hunger doesn't show up as loud or dramatic. It often begins as a quiet dissatisfaction with the things you used to enjoy. You begin to notice that your spirit craves silence more than noise, depth more than entertainment, prayer more than popularity. What once filled you now leaves you empty. And what once seemed boring, like reading scripture, spending time alone with God, worshiping in your room, suddenly becomes your refuge. This isn't a personality change. It's a spiritual awakening. The more you begin to seek God, the more you want to seek Him. That's the mystery of spiritual hunger. It grows the more you feed it. And the deeper it goes, the more clearly you begin to see what truly matters. You start recognizing the voice of God, not just in sermons or songs, but in your spirit, in the Word, in the stillness. You're no longer content just knowing about God. You want to know Him. Not just conceptually, but intimately. And that desire is a sign that you're walking the right way. The enemy will try to convince you that hunger is a sign of lack, that you must be missing something. But in truth, spiritual hunger is a sign of maturity. It's a sign that you've tasted the presence of God and nothing else can compare. It means you've outgrown spiritual junk food. You're no longer satisfied with feel-good quotes and temporary fixes. You want truth, you want fire, you want God. And when that desire takes root in you, it begins to shape everything. Your conversations shift. You start noticing what feeds your spirit and what drains it. You're more aware of what you consume, what you think about, how you spend your time. Not out of religious duty, but out of desire, the kind of desire that comes from loving someone deeply. And you realize that this isn't about checking boxes or being a better Christian. It's about drawing near to the one who first drew near to you. There's something sacred about being spiritually awake in a world that's spiritually asleep. It sets you apart. You may feel like you don't fit in the places you used to, like your spirit is being stretched beyond what's comfortable. But that discomfort is part of the growth. God doesn't awaken hunger in you so you can stay the same. He awakens it so he can lead you deeper. Stretch your faith, refine your heart, and reveal more of himself. Alan Watts once spoke of the longing for something beyond the self as being the essence of spiritual life. And in many ways, that longing is what brings us closest to God. The longing itself is holy. When you begin to feel like this world is not enough, not the pleasures, not the achievements, not even the good things, that's a sign your soul is alive. That's a sign you've touched the eternal. And once you've touched the eternal, nothing temporary can hold you the same way. This spiritual hunger will often make you feel misunderstood. Not everyone around you will feel it. Some will question your intensity, your devotion, your quiet pulling away from distractions. But don't let that discourage you. You were not called to blend in. You were called to burn. And your hunger is not something to be hidden. It is a flame that should be fed. It is a signal that you are walking with God, and he is calling you into deeper waters. You may notice that you no longer want to rush through your quiet time, that you find yourself praying even when you didn't plan to, that your heart is more easily moved by worship, more tender in repentance, more sensitive to conviction. These are not emotions. They are evidences. They are spiritual signs that God is molding your heart, softening it, strengthening it, and shaping it into something that resembles his own. And the beauty is, this hunger does not lead to exhaustion, it leads to renewal. The more you seek God, the more he fills you. The more you pursue him, the more you find him, and every encounter changes you. Every quiet morning, every whispered prayer, every tear shed in his presence, it's all forming you into someone who walks not by the world's rhythm, but by the Spirit's leading. If you feel that hunger now, that pull, that ache, that thirst, honor it, feed it, don't ignore it. That hunger is not there to torment you. It's there to guide you. It's God's way of saying, you're on the right path. Don't stop here. Keep coming. You may not see all the fruit yet. You may still be in the process. But this desire, this awakening, is proof that your heart is alive and your steps are aligned. So don't run from the hunger. Don't numb it or dismiss it. Let it grow. Let it guide you. Because that hunger is holy. It is God's whisper, calling you deeper. And the deeper you go, the more you'll discover that what your soul was craving all along wasn't a breakthrough, a blessing, or a platform. It was him. Just him. And when you find him, you'll realize that hunger wasn't a void. It was a signal, a signpost, a compass pointing you home. There comes a moment in your walk with God when you realize something profoundly. You don't have to force what is meant for you. The striving, the stress, the overthinking, all begin to fade when you start trusting the rhythm of divine timing. When you are truly aligned with God's will, doors begin to open without pushing, paths begin to clear without striving, and what once felt heavy starts to flow with surprising ease. This doesn't mean life becomes effortless, but it does mean that the effort is no longer driven by fear. It's led by faith. You've spent years trying to make things happen, trying to push your way through every closed door, trying to convince people to stay, trying to manipulate outcomes so that they line up with your expectations. And what did it bring? Exhaustion, anxiety, disappointment. But now something has changed. You're learning that when God is truly leading, you don't have to manipulate, chase, or force. You can walk in peace. Because what is meant for you will meet you when you're ready for it. There's a stillness that comes with that realization, a calm that settles over your heart. You begin to understand that it's not your striving that moves God, it's your surrender. It's not your plans that open the right doors, it's your posture of trust. And so you start to let go. Not out of laziness, but out of wisdom. You begin to rest more in the assurance that God is the one writing your story. Not you, not your fear, not your past, not your timeline. What a relief it is to walk in a way that feels like flow, not friction. You stop begging for doors to open. You start listening. You start discerning. You become more sensitive to what aligns and what doesn't. And when something doesn't feel right, you don't force it. You move on in peace. Because you now know that anything you have to force to stay will never bring you peace. And anything from God will not require you to lose yourself to keep it. You'll begin to see this new rhythm in relationships. The people who are meant to walk with you won't require you to prove your worth. They'll show up. They'll stay. The connections will be natural. The conversations will feel alive. There will be no need to pretend. And the ones who drift away, you'll release them without bitterness. Knowing that absence is also a form of alignment. You're no longer chasing people. You're attracting what aligns with who you're becoming. You'll see this in your purpose, too. The ideas that come to you will carry peace. The opportunities will arise from places you didn't expect. People will mention your name in rooms you've never entered. What used to require immense effort will now begin to unfold with quiet grace. It doesn't mean there won't be work, but the work will feel different. You're not hustling for approval anymore. You're working from a place of being already chosen, already called, already covered. Alan Watts once said that when you try to control the world too much, you lose touch with it. In the same way, when you try to control every outcome, you lose touch with God's presence in the process. But when you let go of your grip, when you surrender your plans, when you move with what's unfolding instead of constantly resisting it, life begins to feel more sacred. The pressure lifts. The noise quiets. The path becomes clearer, not because all your questions are answered, but because your spirit is finally still enough to hear. This doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. No, you still show up. You still plan, you still move, you still act. But the difference is this: you act from a place of partnership, not panic. You step forward with open hands, not clenched fists. You work with the Spirit, not against it. And in that posture, miracles happen. The right people call. The right doors swing open. The right timing aligns. Not because you forced it, but because you were finally still enough to receive it. You will know you are on the right path when you stop feeling like you have to fight for every inch of progress. When you begin to see doors open that you didn't even knock on. When you find yourself in rooms you didn't ask to enter. When peace becomes your confirmation, not just your desire. That's when you know God is moving on your behalf. That's when you realize that the path was never about proving yourself. It was about trusting Him. And yes, there will still be delays. There will still be waiting. But even the waiting won't feel like punishment. It will feel like preparation. You won't resent the time it takes, because you understand that what God builds slowly, He builds deeply. And what flows without striving will stand without shaking. You'll begin to value the quiet seasons just as much as the busy ones, because you now know that in both, God is working. So if you've recently felt things beginning to unfold with a new ease, if the right people, places, and ideas are coming into your life without frantic striving, take that as a sign. That is not coincidence. That is grace. That is alignment. That is heaven saying, you're on the right path. Keep walking. And if you're still in the season before the flow, if things still feel hard, heavy, and uncertain, don't panic. Surrender. Let go of what you're forcing. Make room. Clear space. And then watch. When your heart is still, when your hands are open, when your faith is anchored, that's when the divine rhythm begins. And that rhythm always leads to where you were meant to go. God is not looking for your performance. He's looking for your trust. And when you begin to trust, things begin to move. Not because you made them happen, but because you aligned with the one who already did. There is a moment in the journey where something strange happens. You begin to feel peace, not because everything is finally perfect, but because something within you has shifted. You're no longer chasing every answer, no longer panicking about every unanswered prayer, no longer trying to control every outcome. Instead, you find yourself breathing deeper, walking slower, resting more confidently. It's not because the battles are over. It's because you've realized something: sacred peace is not the absence of problems, it's the presence of God. When you're walking on the right path, One of the most profound signs is the presence of peace that surpasses understanding. That phrase, surpasses understanding, is important, because it means that this peace doesn't make sense on the surface. You could be in the middle of a storm, facing uncertainty, dealing with delays, disappointments, or even deep loss, and still, somehow, you're not falling apart. That's not denial, that's divine. That's the Spirit of God guarding your heart and mind, just as the Scripture promised. This kind of peace doesn't come from everything going your way. It comes from surrendering the need to know exactly how things will work out. It comes from trusting the one who does know. There is an unexplainable rest that comes when you stop obsessing over outcomes and start living in obedience. When your focus shifts from results to relationship, from control to connection, that's when peace makes its home in you. And it's not passive. This isn't some numb, indifferent feeling. It's active. It grounds you. It strengthens you. It helps you respond instead of react. It keeps your feet steady when everything else is shifting. People around you may not understand how you're keeping it together, how you're still standing, how you're still moving forward with a quiet resolve. But you know, you've been touched by something greater than your situation. You've been held by a presence that this world can't give and can't take away. Alan Watts once spoke about the art of not being anxious, describing a deep trust in the natural rhythm of life. In the Christian journey, that rhythm isn't random. It's divine. It's God's hand moving through your life, unseen but undeniable. And when you begin to walk in step with Him, you discover that peace isn't a reward for getting everything right. It's a companion for those who choose to trust even when they don't. Peace becomes your confirmation. When you're about to make a decision and you feel peace settle over you, it's like God saying, "This is the way. Walk in it." When you're moving towards something new, and there's uncertainty ahead but no fear within, that's peace speaking louder than logic. You may not have all the details, but you have the one thing that matters, a quiet, unwavering sense that you are not alone, that God is here. And if He is here, you can walk forward. The world tells you to chase certainty, to secure every answer before you move. But God invites you to chase Him, and promises that as you do, peace will follow. Peace isn't the prize at the end of the journey. It's the companion of those who walk with God. It's a fruit, not a formula. It grows in the soil of trust, in the garden of surrender. And the more you nurture that surrender, the deeper your peace becomes. You might still have questions. You might still face resistance. But peace gives you the clarity to keep moving without panic. It calms your mind in moments of indecision. It silences the fear that used to paralyze you. It gives you the ability to rest even when you're still waiting. And in a world obsessed with urgency and noise, this kind of peace is revolutionary. It marks you. It sets you apart. Because when others are spiraling, you're anchored. Not because of who you are, but because of who you trust. That doesn't mean you won't ever feel shaken. You're human. There will be moments when doubt creeps in, when fear knocks at the door, when circumstances try to steal your peace. But now you know where to return. Now you know how to breathe again, how to realign, how to let go and lean in. You know that peace isn't a feeling you chase. It's a promise you receive. And you receive it by faith, moment by moment, breath by breath. If you've been walking through a season of chaos, and yet somewhere in your soul there is stillness, honor that. That is sacred. That is holy ground. That is God affirming that you are exactly where you need to be, even if the details are messy, even if the future is unclear, even if the waiting is long. If peace is present, then God is present, and His presence is always a sign you're on the right path. Don't let the world convince you that peace means comfort, ease, or simplicity. Some of the most peaceful people are the ones walking through the hardest seasons. But they've learned the secret. Peace is not the reward for avoiding storms. It is the strength to walk through them. Peace is not a product of control. It is a gift of surrender. So if you've found yourself breathing easier, even in uncertainty, if your heart has felt anchored, even when the winds of life are strong, If you've felt moments of stillness rise up in the chaos, then don't question that. That's not weakness. That's not avoidance. That's not escapism. That is God. That is the Spirit bearing witness within you. That is heaven confirming, softly but clearly, keep going. You're exactly where you need to be. Let that peace guide your decisions. Let it guard your heart. Let it silence every lie that says you should be panicking, rushing, proving. You don't have to strive to prove your purpose. You don't have to rush to meet someone else's timeline. You just have to walk, step by step, moment by moment, in the presence of God. And as you do, peace will go before you, walk beside you, and remain behind you. Because peace is not just a sign you're on the right path. Peace is the path. And the one who walks it with you has already gone ahead to prepare the way. There is something unmistakably powerful about the moment you begin to see real, tangible fruit from your obedience. You've been walking by faith, sometimes blindly, sometimes weeping, often wondering if it's all making a difference. You've prayed when it hurt, obeyed when it was uncomfortable, served when no one was watching, and stayed faithful when it would have been easier to walk away. And now, finally, something begins to shift. The seeds you planted in private begin to sprout in public. The prayers whispered in the dark begin to bear visible fruit. And that moment, when the invisible becomes visible, is God's way of affirming you're on the right path. This isn't about success in the way the world defines it. It's deeper than achievement, louder than applause, richer than material gain. It's about impact. It's about transformation. It's about walking into a room and carrying peace. It's about someone telling you, "What you said changed me." It's about feeling the grace of God flow through your obedience and realizing you didn't waste the pain, the time, or the tears. Every sacrifice mattered. Every small act of faith planted a seed that heaven watered. You start to notice things aligning. Not perfectly, but purposefully. People are drawn to you, not because of charisma, but because of the Spirit within you. Doors begin to open that you didn't knock on. Ideas begin to flow that you didn't manufacture. Resources show up right when you need them. There's a rhythm to it all, a divine coordination that reminds you this is not random. This is harvest. This is the reward of endurance. Not a trophy, but a touch. Not fame, but fruit. And the fruit itself isn't always flashy. It might be the restoration of a relationship you thought was over. It might be a sudden clarity about your purpose. It might be a quiet moment in worship where you realize your heart is healed from something that used to hurt. It might be the peace that no longer leaves you when storms come. It's the spiritual fruit that the world can't see but heaven celebrates: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These aren't just Christian traits. They're evidence, proof that the Spirit is at work within you. You begin to see that your inner world has changed. You're no longer reacting from fear. You're responding with wisdom. You're not walking around bitter or exhausted. You're living from overflow, and people feel it. They sense the difference. You're no longer striving to be seen, your content being faithful. And in that faithfulness, influence grows. Not platform, but power. Not control, but compassion. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard anymore. The authority of your life speaks louder than your words. Alan Watts often explored the idea of harmony with the flow of life. In the Christian journey, that harmony is the natural result of alignment with God. And when you're aligned, fruit is inevitable. Not always instant, not always dramatic, but real, sustainable, eternal. God is not mocked. What you sow, you will reap. And when you reap in righteousness, it's not for your glory, it's for His. But perhaps what's most beautiful about seeing fruit in your life is the humility it brings. You know you didn't make it happen. You know how weak you felt. You remember the days you almost gave up. You recall the private moments of doubt, the prayers prayed through clenched teeth, the silent car rides filled with questions. And yet, here it is. Growth, impact, breakthrough. Not because you were strong, but because He was. Not because you earned it, but because you endured. This fruit becomes a testimony, a living message that says, God is faithful. Others may look at your life and admire the results, but you know the root. You know the secret place it grew from. You know the battles fought in silence, the choices made when no one saw, the integrity maintained in private. That's what makes the fruit so sweet, not just its flavor, but its origin. It came from deep roots. It came from faith forged in fire. And now your life begins to nourish others. Your story feeds hungry souls. Your resilience gives people hope. Your peace gives others permission to rest. Your clarity helps others find their own direction. You're not just walking the path anymore. You're lighting the way. You've become a signpost for others, living proof that it's possible to walk with God and come out whole. But even as fruit appears, you stay rooted. You don't let it make you proud. You let it make you more dependent. Because now you know, without the vine you can do nothing. You are simply a branch chosen by grace, used by God, bearing fruit that will remain. And that awareness keeps you grounded. It keeps you grateful. It keeps you going. So if you've started seeing the fruit, celebrate it. Not with ego, but with awe. Marvel at what God has done through your obedience. Let it strengthen you for what's ahead. And if the fruit hasn't appeared yet, don't stop. Keep planting, keep praying, keep pressing on. Because harvest is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The seeds you've sown in faith will not return void. Fruit doesn't lie. It's the clearest confirmation that your steps are ordered, that your time in the wilderness wasn't wasted, that your yes to God mattered more than you knew, that even when you couldn't see it, heaven was working beneath the surface. And now the invisible has become visible. The promise has turned to proof. And that proof says it all: you are on the right path.